All right, so today we're going to talk about psychology. I am currently live on a few different platforms at the moment, so I've got comments and questions coming in over here. And I did a live talk about a month ago now, and it was on the subject of money. And some of the questions I got and some of the feedback I got afterwards showed me that you guys actually really like when I just riff on a subject for a little while. So here I am again, going to do that today, and we're going to talk about psychology, how psychology can affect you, how you can improve yourself with it, how you can take advantage of the opportunities that you have around you as well. I've got questions here, some really good questions, like how you keep yourself productive, status in men and women, how to get a date, somebody is asked, how to improve your lead generation, daily routines, all sorts of good stuff. So I'm just going to riff on this subject for a little bit. Keep the questions pouring in. So there's an amazing psychological concept which you should know about. And if you can understand this principle, a lot of things will change for you, honestly. So in the 1960s, there's a psychologist called Martin Seligman. And in the 1960s, they didn't really have as many animal rights as they have now. So some of this story might actually trigger you. But basically, Martin Seligman got a box and put dogs in this box. And what he would do on his first lot of experiments was electric shock these dogs. And these dogs could not get out of the box. You know, it had a lid on, it had the sides as well. He'd electric shock them. And the dogs would jump up, desperately trying to escape, as you can imagine, right? And he did this with all different dogs, and the reaction was the same. Each dog was desperately trying to escape these electric shocks because they just didn't want to experience that anymore. In the second phase of the experiment, they got these same dogs and put them in a box, but with an open top and low sides, so the dog could easily escape. And they administered electric shocks again to these dogs. And what happened was the dogs did not even try to escape. Instead, they just lay on the ground and kind of gave up. And Martin Seligman coined the finding of this experiment learned helplessness. And basically what that means is if you are an individual, let's extrapolate this over to humans. If you're a human and you go through repeated negative life events and they keep happening to you, over time, you can learn to become helpless. You've all seen helpless people where they're just not in charge of anything. They can't control any part of their life, and they're pretty helpless in any scenario. And when the pressure goes and they go through like a stressful thing, they just completely fall apart, right? They've learned to be helpless. They believe they have no control over the situation. And this kind of concept of learned helplessness has been applied to a wide range of different situations, from relationships to people who fail at school. So it's important that you remember that you are not a product of your past. You might be right at the moment, right? But it doesn't always determine your future. And you have to realize that most of the time in your life, the box you're in, it has the lid off and the sides are relatively low. And you don't have to exert that much effort to actually change your circumstances. I gave debt advice to people in debt for quite a while, and when you go through thousands of sessions with different people, long conversations, you start to realize there's a few different types of personalities. There's a personality who doesn't matter what they happen to them, they're just resilient, they're just strong, they don't really care, they just want a solution to their problem, which is the debt. And then you see the other type of personality where they might not even be in a particularly bad situation, but they've just accepted that there's nothing they can do about it and they're just in full despair. And you have to understand that life just works exactly like this. Genuinely take a look at yourself and see if what you're doing right now, if the situation you're in, if you're not particularly happy with the situation, whether your business isn't going well, whether your career's not going well, whether you're not got any friends, whether you've just broken up with somebody, right? And you might have that feeling of depression and despair, and it might feel very, very heavy on your shoulders. But just think to yourself, this is a bad experience that happened, and anybody would react exactly the same. But am I being helpless because I've kind of learned it due to repeated negative events that have happened in my life? And it's so important if you can actually, internalize that study, internalize that story as well, and just keep it at the back of your mind, and just realize that most of the time you can change your circumstances. If you are in a set of circumstances which are struggling, there will be a person at a point in history who's also dealt with your circumstances and they've managed to get out of it. And that is my first intro to this little talk on psychology. We've got a question here from Dave Perez who says, how do you stay productive? So every job I've been in, and this is going to sound really big-headed, I don't mean it to sound big-headed. Every job I've been in, I've always been like a top performer in it. I'm never a top performer in like the first few months, but after a while I'm always like one of the top performers. And the reason why I do it is because I'm efficiency minded. My Myers-Briggs is an ENTJ, so partly it's down to my personality as well, but also I make sure I set things up so I can be ultra productive. So for instance, habits. A person who does not have habits falls apart. So habits and routine. What do you do the first thing that you get up in the morning? Are you spending hours scrolling on your phone? If you can't get going, or doing some sort of movement or exercise or deep thinking straight away in the morning, you're setting yourself a little bit up for failure. As well, if you look at everything around me here, every part of like my day-to-day routine, I set it up to be as easy as possible. And the reason why is because I'm a procrastinator. I'm efficient now, but like naturally my baseline is a procrastinator. I procrastinate all the time. I used to do it as a kid all the time. Like I would hardly get anything done at all. And I noticed that a lot of people are like it. Some people, there's an argument for that being a procrastinator is actually genetic. And, I do think like my mum is a procrastinator as well. And she's kind of given the genes to me. However, if you look at what I do, I try and make things as frictionless as possible. Got this microphone here, and I got this brand new microphone because I used to have a wireless microphone, right, which is much better sound quality, by the way. But this wireless microphone lasts about 3 to 4 hours. And occasionally I would come to film a video and I'm already prepared to film a video. And then I would put my microphone in and I'd realize that it's out of charge and I'd have to wait 20 minutes to get enough charge in it for it to actually work. But that added bit of friction would actually take away from me wanting to film the video. Suddenly, I wouldn't film the video that day. Suddenly, I would think to myself, oh, I've got to film a video now, and then immediately afterwards, I've got to go and put this microphone on charge. And then I've got to test it. Well, next time I use it, I've got to test it to make sure it's got enough charge, right? So it doesn't suddenly run out in the middle. And it's kind of adding all this extra weight on my brain that I don't need. So I'm just like, you know what? I'm just going to get a wired mic. I'm going to get a wired mic. I'm going to connect it up. As soon as I'm ready to film a video, I just hook the mic up, boom, ready to go. This camera that you're looking through right now is sat at the top of my monitor. It's connected directly into my computer. And I just have to flick a button, or I just have to click like an app on my laptop to start filming. So when I'm ready to go, everything else is ready to go. So there's zero friction in what I'm doing. This is such an important concept. There needs to be zero friction in what you're trying to do, the steps you're trying to take to achieve some sort of goal. So I see all these YouTubers all over, YouTube, and they've got like the best camera setup with the right lighting, and they've got, the right sound equipment with a million different buttons. And I just think to myself, yeah, you are a YouTuber, but at the same time, man, how do you get any work done? What does it take you like 2 days to film a single video? I want to be in and I want to be out in 15 minutes, right? Or however long, a video takes. So take the friction out of the actions you need to do. And have that habit and routine in there as well. I try to go to the gym 5-6 days a week, time permitting. And I have the same routine. If I'm taking some lunch, I will immediately head out from here, go to my car, Sorry, go and get changed, go to my car, go straight down. It's a habit, it's a routine. Habits are easy. Brushing your teeth is easy, or I hope it is easy. You're just brushing your teeth. It's just the same action you do every single day. So that's how you stay productive. How do you improve at lead generation for your business? It's very difficult. It is difficult, particularly in 2023, because everyone's trying to do it. So a wise person once taught me that you want to try and attempt to enter industries which are hard. I started a business which was on LinkedIn, and the business over time evolved into teaching other businesses how to get leads. But what I didn't anticipate when I first started that was the level of competition that would actually come into this business. And I would suddenly be competing against all these other businesses because the barrier to entry was quite low. So if you want to improve at lead generation, first of all, you've got to practice on it. You got to the sword will only sharpen when it's in use, right? Secondly, you want to make sure that your competition isn't tons and tons, you've not got tons and tons of competitors. If you've got tons and tons of competitors, you're going to go and start speaking to other people, trying to generate a lead out of them. And what's going to happen ultimately is that you will get shut out because they've already been pitched 100 times before. It doesn't matter how good your pitch is, they've already been pitched 100 times before. It's very hard to convince them. They maybe been burned a few times before from service providers that aren't actually that good. And now you're kind of left to pick up the pieces. So the best way to win that game is not to play that game, is to actually go into an area where people aren't being pitched constantly. So just think about your target market, think about service you're offering as well. Okay. What else have we got here? How do you manage your time? I'm interested to know how you juggle multiple tasks and responsibilities without feeling overwhelmed. I think that's kind of back to psychology. I think that's kind of down to personality type. I am a person who, it takes a while for me to feel overwhelmed on something. I do get overwhelmed, but it takes a while for me to feel overwhelmed. But funnily enough, I've always worked in the start of my working career. I was in hospitality, and I was climbed my way up. So I was managing a really, really, really busy bar, and the pressure and the stress was really, really tough. I was facing pressure and stress constantly. And I think you kind of build up a layer of resilience, and you realize that you've got no choice but to manage these tasks. So first of all, you've got to prioritize exactly what needs doing. This is really basic advice, but you've got to prioritize what needs doing. But I'd also consider, to make yourself not feel overwhelmed, I'd consider just repeatedly exposing yourself to things which you find a little bit stressful, and it builds up that skill, that trait of resilience over time. Definitely recommend you do that. What else we got here? What's your approach to networking? So, networking's a tough one. So, you should ideally you should be having a social part of your day to day. It doesn't matter if you're introverted or extroverted, you should be having a single part of your day to day which is actually dedicated to being social, right? Maybe it's at the end of the day, maybe it's throughout the day, whatever. You need to take that time because it builds the skills of social skills. Once you build the skills of social skills, it's easier to network with people. Most people who come to me and say, oh, how do you network? You seem like you're a very extroverted person. I am an extroverted person. But there's other extroverted people out there who come and ask, what should I do? How should I handle these conversations? First of all, be nice. But secondly, you need to put yourself in repeated social situations so you know how to actually handle and speak to different people, right? It's one of those skills that has to be built up, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. You still need to actually just expose yourself to this area of just speaking to people, speak to people. Try and allocate an hour a day where you either text friends, you reach out to your family, and you try and build those relationships. You forget that you're in a playground. If you've got family or friends, or even if you know, you had friends and you've not really spoken to them in a while, you forget you're in a playground where you can basically be on practice mode, right? It's like a video game, you're on practice mode. There's no real consequences, you can just practice building networks, relationships, be kind to people. There's a great book here, How to Win Friends and Influence People, that's a classic. The basic premise is be kind, always listen more than you talk, always ask questions about them. My uncle, who is working for a multi-billion-dollar company, I said to him one day when I was trying to climb up in my career, I said, hey, you know, how have you managed to get this far in your career? Obviously, you must be good at what you're doing, but at the same time, you need something extra to actually put you into this position. And he said, I never forget what he said. He said, you have to be interested and interesting in that order. And you can only be interested in someone else if you ask them questions. So most people, you've probably experienced this yourself, but most people, they talk about themselves, right? You know, narcissism is a real problem in the modern day world. They talk about themselves, they'll just talk and talk and talk and talk. I do this, I do this, I do this, I do this. And they never really ask about how you are. And that's generally what I find with a lot of people, honestly. But you must ask questions about them, like dig in a little bit deeper there, and they'll actually be like, this person is genuinely interested in me. Everyone loves to have things asked about themselves. It makes them feel important. It makes them feel good, rather than you sitting there and thinking, oh, when's it my time to speak? I used to make that mistake, actually. Just I'm so talkative, I can't stop talking. But I hope that helps. Ask me another question. I don't know if that answered it very well. Ask me another question if you think that I could maybe shed a bit more light there. I have been trying to date. What is the best way to get a girlfriend? Been following the manosphere. What do you think of the manosphere? Well, I'm also a man, so I'm very interested in men's mental health, emotional well-being as well. Here's what I'd say. Let me think about how I phrase this. Take everything that you hear online with a pinch of salt. Okay, so I'm completely for the manosphere. I've heard some advice coming from it, and some of the advice is really good. Some of the other advice is not so good, honestly. Shouldn't be treating women like objects, first of all. It's kind of weird. But I know a lot of the manosphere, they refer... It's funny, because they make arguments about, evolutionary psychology says this, or it's all in evolution. This is just how men and women were through times. I'm well versed in evolutionary psychology, and sometimes they are way off base with what they're saying, although they're quoting it. And I'm like, well, if you're going to quote it, you at least better get it right? So what I would say is, when you talk about evolutionary psychology and talk about men and women and how they interact with each other and sort of how relationships are made, you should cover your basic traits, right? Women, according to the research, really like men who can get resources. So there's a slight nuance to that. You don't have to be a rich guy, right? You just have to try and be going somewhere. Women, in general, like people who are going somewhere. So it's actually called industriousness on the actual surveys. So industriousness and ambition. Are you ambitious enough? Are you setting goals for yourself? Are you attempting to go out there and hunt, modern day hunting, trying to improve your life, trying to gather resources? Whether you're improving yourself in some way. Are we getting yourself to the gym? Are we getting yourself to areas where people who you want to date hang out? I'd also be seriously trying to go somewhere and hit your goals, right? Because that right there is like very, very attractive to people. I've always been a goal-driven guy, and I've always been in a relationship. So is there any correlation with that? Probably, right? I don't think I'm that good looking or anything. So hopefully that helps. Read Evolutionary Psychology by Dr. David Buss. Read Evolution of Desire as well. They're really, really good books. Try it, form your social circle as well. Start getting repeated gatherings. You don't have to go out and drink all the time. Getting repeated gatherings of people together. That'll kill two birds. It will help you with the social side of things, but it will also give you a good base, a coalition. The world is made on coalitions of people to be around when you're out there, right? Trying to impress someone. Okay, so hopefully that helps you. Okay, who do you follow and listen to? I mean, let's have a look right here. I follow a whole bunch of different people, honestly. I do follow a bunch of different people. I've got to just give a bit more of a point on that. But I'm also quite selective about people that I follow as well. You have to understand that social media in 2023, where we're filming this now, and over the last few years, is a brilliant tool, and it's also a very dangerous tool as well. So it's brilliant because there's a low barrier to entry. Anyone can set up a camera like this. Anyone can make a Facebook post, a LinkedIn post or whatever, and start to become an influencer and start to be able to influence people around them. That's like the definition of an influencer, right? But the problem is with that is that anyone can now put a camera in front of themselves, and anyone can now make a post and reach a lot of different people. And there's that saying that the young doctor fattens the graveyard. So there's so many people out there who, if you know a little bit about the subject that they're talking about, you realize quite quickly they don't really know much at all about what they're talking about. So you should always be vetting every single person that you're listening to, including me, right? You should always be vetting them, thinking, does this person have an actual point, right? There's this guy, he's a young guy, and he's a popular person in the, let's just say, influencer world. And, he's a very well-off guy, and he's constantly talking about how, he grew up in such a difficult situation, and, he made his money. He just hustled and grinded until he, became a millionaire and all this. And I'm in circles. I know this person's backstory, and they absolutely did not. They absolutely did not create that money themselves. They had, and I'm not saying they didn't create money later on in life after they'd already got money, but they certainly didn't start at square zero, where most people start from. So you've got a question like, should you really be taking advice from that type of person? Because they haven't been where you've been. You've got a unique set of challenges which they are unfamiliar with. And I was listening to this guy the other day, I think he was like an e-com guy. But this person was interviewing him, and they were like, oh, let's talk to me about, your first million and how you made that. And that's what most people want to hear about. And he was just like, well, there's like a huge audience as well. And he was like, well, yeah, so I made my first million off crypto. And they were like, well, so did you have like a business before it? And he was like, no, I just made my first million off crypto. And you got to kind of think, right? Why would you listen to, and there's no disrespect to them, but why would you listen to this person talking about how to make money when they made their money from crypto? Like a lot of people, like tons of people made the money from crypto over the last few years. That wasn't a tough thing to do, right? That wasn't like a challenge. So be very, very selective about the people you listen to. They might seem wise because they're flashing all this cash, and they trigger something called authority bias in your head. So authority bias is like when you're around authority figures, they can have higher status than you. They can be seen as more important, higher prestige, more respect, more resources than you. It triggers something in your head called authority bias. It's like if, let's think of a very popular person. It's like if Conor McGregor came walking into the room, all the eyes would just be watching him. He would have quite high status, and it would probably trigger your authority bias. If he was dead friendly to you, you'd be super friendly back. You'd be constantly, your eyes would just constantly look around the room for him. I know that sounds pretty crazy, but that's just generally how it works. But the thing is, if you've got a person who is high status because they've got lots of resources, you will automatically see them as an authority, and because you'll see them as an authority, you'll take in more of their information. And if the information isn't great, or they don't really know what they're talking about, and the reason why I don't really know what they're talking about is because they haven't had to deal with the same challenges that you've had to deal with, then you've got to be very, very, very selective. Learn to filter your information that comes through. So who am I? Who do I follow at the moment? Well, I'm following a lot of Dr. David Buss. He's one of the most respected people on the planet for his work and studies into evolutionary psychology, which it basically controls all different types of psychology. So I would love in the future to get him on here. I'm sure he's got a huge speaking fee. Love to get him on here to have a good discussion with him, because I respect that guy an awful lot. Who else am I following right now? What books am I reading? Let's have a look on my Audible. Oh, How to Win Friends and Influence People. I've literally just got the audio book on that, so that's by Dale Carnegie. The reason why that's a great book is because the reason why I started looking into that book, should I say, is that Warren Buffett once said that book changed his life. Warren Buffett's one of the richest people on the planet. I'm focused on money at the moment, so if it changed his life, it's likely to change, my life at some level. And it's a really good book. I've read it before, but I want to listen to it as well so I can internalize some of the lessons in. Who else would I get on here? Reid Hoffman, I like that guy's lots and lots of wisdom about quickly scaling companies and making mistakes and barreling through them anyway. He's the CEO of LinkedIn, sorry. So I'd get him on here as well. Jordan Peterson, I quite like Jordan Peterson. I've not listened to him too much, but I know that he's very, very popular, and I'm a strange person. I don't generally follow people when they're popular, or like at the hype stage. I generally follow them later. So one of Tai Lopez's masterminds, and he was super popular and came to like stardom in like 2014 or 2015, and I only really started listening to the stuff he was saying in 2020, right? So that's like 6 years later after the hype has died down. But then also you get to see if people are the real deal as well. So that's the benefit about that, and that's kind of how I filter my information. So most of these influencers that you see on YouTube that you might be taking advice from, whether it's for your SMMA, whether it's for a different business as well, whether it's how to generate money and all this stuff, most of these guys will not exist in the next 5 years, right? They will go extinct, because most businesses go extinct. But also as well, you can't get money too quickly. It affects your brain, affects your brain psychologically, overwhelms it, right? If you think about lottery winners, what is it, 4 out of 5 in the first 5 years? I just completely made that statistic up, but it's a high statistic. Lottery winners, on average, lose their winnings in the first 5 years because they've never had money all their life, and then they suddenly get this big injection of money. Completely overloads the psychology, and they just fritter it all, spend it all. I remember if Mike Tyson in the 1980s can spend 400 million in a few years and go broke in the 80s, then a few million in this day and age is not going to last you very long, particularly if you've never handled it before. I'm going to see how much 400 million in the 80s, compared to today. Yeah, so that would be so they're saying here the equivalent from 1980 to today's value, Google tells me, is 1.4 billion. So, he would in that same situation would spend 1.4 billion today, which is obviously insane numbers. Like, what do you even spend that on? You can't spend that. Apparently you can't. That's what my head tells me, but apparently you can, right? So think about that as well. Got to think about that. Okay. Yeah, as well, if you've been a person who's never had money in all your life, and you start to try and close bigger deals. When I say bigger deals, I mean like high ticket deals. That's going to overload your brain. Like, I came from quite a poor family, honestly. And I remember signing a client for £80. This is a good few years ago. It was, what did I have to do for them? I'll create them a CV, a resume, and a bit of interview coaching as well, something like that. And it was £80. And I tell you what, I was like, when I did that first deal, I was like, man, my life's changed. I've just generated money out of thin air, selling my expertise, right? And then it took me, when I started to focus on higher price stuff, it took me a while to be able to ask for a 2K deal. And the reason why it took me a while to be able to ask for a 2K deal is because I just wasn't used to that type of money. I would probably get paid 2K from my job, but like not generating it myself made my brain explode a little bit. And then I wanted to start charging more than that when I thought that was worth more. And that was very, very tough as well, just because I couldn't cope with the higher price of things. Like my brain hadn't caught up to it, right? It's like the self-image. There's a good book here called Psycho-Cybernetics. Where is it? Psycho-Cybernetics. And the whole book is about how your self-image controls everything. So how you view yourself in your mind's eye. Do you view yourself as a powerful person? Do you view yourself as a talented person? Or do you view yourself as what's that image that flies to your mind? Are you getting massively anxious before something happens? You're thinking of everything that's going to possibly go wrong. Because that's most people. I've done that as well. And when you think like that, you're more likely to produce that in reality. So if your self-image is very, very high, my self-image when I was trying to close these, deals was that like, that's a lot of money. I wouldn't know what to do. Like if it's changed that, if you're closing a £5,000 sale, right, completely on your own, generated, and selling that as a service which almost you've generated out of thin air because you're selling yourself as a service. You're saying, I'll do this job for you for £5,000. That's a lot of money to ask for, right? As soon as you take that money, that means everything that has happened in your life, the dollars or pounds that you've earned per hour in the corporate world, whether you've been a bartender, whether you've worked in the corporate world, that means everything that you've earned from that has been undervalued and underpaid. And that means you've been wrong for a long time. So it's powerful, powerful, powerful. You can't just, if you're talking about psychology, you can't just go from 0 to 100. You need the steps along the way, right? You need, right, I'm going to close a $100 deal today, right? Now it's going to be $150. Now it's going to be $500. Now it's going to be $700. You need the steps because your brain explodes otherwise, which is why when people have actually come from money, some of these people have online, it's a lot more than just being given money. They're used to money, right? They've seen money before. They've been around money. They've been around luxury. They've been around nicer cars, nicer homes, right? Closing the £5,000 deal to them might not require as much inner work. It might not require any at all. So there's so many more steps up that you get just from being around money, even if you never actually had that money given to you, right? So brain is a complicated place. Okay, next question. I feel like I rambled for a long time on that. What advice do you have for young men? Such a broad question. I'd probably get into fitness, get into, health, weightlifting. I would say that's probably one of the most important things. Push yourself a little bit. So getting into fitness, pushing yourself, it impacts your psychology in a completely different way than you would think, actually. So obviously, you get buffer, you get a little bit in better shape as well, but it teaches you to push through pain. It teaches you routine of painful routines. So you're not going to the gym and having a great time, right? Sometimes you go in there and you're working hard, right? So it's teaching you the routine of having to work hard when you need to. Improves your mental health significantly, cuts down on your anxiety. I am more of an ADHD person, And I try to go to the gym 5 to 6 days a week, but the days I don't go, maybe I have a little bit more energy, but like my energy is so much more like scattered. It's just hard, it's much harder to focus. So you get the focus out of it as well, lower anxiety. You're in a place with a lot of people as well who all have the same goals as yourself. You know, learning to push through pain as well, helping your testosterone levels. Apparently, like testosterone in this day and age is a lot lower than it used to be. I saw Derek from More Plates, More Dates make a video about that, and I can't remember what he concluded, but he's smarter than me in this area, so he's definitely one of the top people to understand this. Remember, listen to the people who know what they're talking about as well. And that guy, Derek, definitely knows what he's talking about. He's done the work, he's looked into the studies as well. I would also learn a little bit about fighting. The reason why, because that gives you a different kind of confidence and it makes you more comfortable around people as well. So when I was a kid, I got up to like a brown belt in like karate and freestyle kickboxing. Then when I was in my early teens, I went to an amateur boxing club, and it was a really, really good boxing club as well. So there was some Golden Gloves champs there. So in the UK, we have Golden Gloves champs, and or we used to anyway. I'm not sure if we still do anymore. Well, they're basically very, very skilled champion level boxers. And, you know, then I did, what did I do after that? Oh, I did that till I was about 17 or 18. And then when I was like 20, I started MMA. So it was submission wrestling and mixed martial arts, different things like that. Essentially like cage fighting stuff. And then in my early 20s, early to mid 20s, I was doing Muay Thai kickboxing as well. So I 100% recommend those sports because you will never find less ego type people in those sports. You can, you know, I've got a lot of good friends from the MMA groups that I was in. You know, I'd happily still go out for a beer with some of these guys. Just because like you get a different level of bonding with people if you actually punch them in the head and they punch you in the head as well. Like there's nothing else really. So I'd 100% recommend that. It helps you build relationships with good people, generally good people. Fitness as well. That's absolutely what I would recommend as a young guy. I think that's all you asked for that question. Don't worry too much about money at the moment. Worry more about your knowledge. We've covered the fitness, obviously, but your knowledge of the world. And don't be taking the knowledge of the world from 5-second TikTok videos. You're going to learn nothing from 5-second TikTok videos, even though this is what the entire world are watching right now. 5-second TikTok videos are not going to help anyone, okay? So, what have we got? Another question here. Best ways to stay motivated when it comes to psychology. So motivation's a tough one, right? I've switched stances on this a few different times now. I've got to be honest, throughout my life. And maybe it's because that's what works for you right now. But you have to have a reason for doing something, right? You know, my mom is a therapist. She's retired now, but like she was a therapist, and she'd been a therapist for 30 years. And she said the most interesting thing. She says sometimes she'd help people with a variety of different problems. It could be, you know, trauma, psychological issues, mental issues. It could be helping them, giving them, you know, positive feelings for weight loss, or like helping them quit smoking and things like this, and talking out like the problems that were associated with this and why they felt the need to anchor themselves. And she said she was very, very good at what she did as well. Like some of the stories you'd hear, like very, very good, very talented woman. And even though I'm biased in that area, she said every single person who came to get help for quitting smoking, the ones which failed 100% of the time were because somebody was making them come to the therapy to quit smoking. It should be the dad. You need to quit smoking. You need to get rid of that. You need to get rid of that. It could be, their partner, their children. Every time they didn't actually want to quit smoking, every time they were forced to actually quit smoking by somebody else and it wasn't actually their decision, they didn't have their why to do it, they'd fail. And the same thing works in life as well. You see the people who, they go to the gym in January. They just kind of feel like they should go to the gym, right? They don't really have like a strong reason of why they want to improve themselves. Maybe they've just got friends who are going, or maybe they feel they look in the mirror one day and they're like, oh, I don't really like what I see there. And they go to the gym, they go for a quick while, and then they quit straight away. And it's because the why wasn't really strong enough. The pain of them going, could be the friction they had. It needs to be, think of it like a seesaw. The seesaw needs to be like that. Your why needs to outweigh all the other different reasons. That is how the brain works. It's this amazing book. It was actually recommended by Tai Lopez, called Civilization and Its Discontent. And the book was by Freud, Sigmund Freud, who's a very, very famous psychologist. He's a little bit infamous as well because of some of the views he had on things. But also, there's smart people out there who all have stupid ideas at some point, right? But this guy was smart in some very specific places. And he writes this chapter, and it's chapter 2 in Civilization and Its Discontent. And he talks about how basically life is a balance for humans between trying to get away from pain and trying to pursue pleasure. And we're just constantly trying to get away from pain. Whenever there's pain, we just try and get away from it, and we just try and pursue the pleasure. Okay, so you have to think your why comes from those areas right there. What is the reward for myself? What am I trying to get out of this? What am I seeking? What am I trying to escape? And depending on your personality, you will have a stronger drive from either the pain, escaping the pain, or escaping the reward. Trying to get the reward. So have a real think about the times where you've been highly motivated and you've either crushed your goals, you have just basically smashed it, and think to yourself, what was the key motivating factor there? Were you trying to impress someone, so trying to get to the reward, or were you trying to escape feeling insecure, trying to escape the pain, right? So think about it, think deep on it. Robert Greene's got a great book. It's like The Laws of Human Nature. Friggin' amazing read. I've got the audio book on my phone, and it's like 30 hours long. And when I saw that, I was like, it took me like I listen to books in different parts and I swap books every now and again, but it took me like a whole year to listen to the full thing. And I was, anytime I was driving, I had it in. Unfortunately, I don't drive too much, so. But one of the things was that you should meditate on like problems. You should, anytime you come up with something that you don't quite know the answer to, you should sit back and actually like think deeply on it. And life at the moment is all about kind of surface level stuff, checking your social media at surface level, attending your job at surface level. And only at times when we're really exposed to raw, deep things, right, is only the times we kind of get a reality check. Like most people are just on this treadmill path, including myself at some points, but I have to check myself. And the treadmill path is like, I'm just going to get up, I'm just going to brush my teeth today, I'm going to comb my hair, and then I'm going to proceed doing, sit down in front of my laptop or go to my job, and then I'm going to come down, I'm going to turn on Netflix, I'm going to go to bed, and then I'm going to start the whole day again. It's a treadmill, right? And only that routine is broken through like life events, really. All right, it's a very, very stressful period. I've just lost my job. Reality check. My partner has just left me. And suddenly, they feel really insecure about themselves. They'll go to the gym, lose a bunch of weight and all this stuff. And only these big reality checks where you forces you to sit down and meditate on those problems or just think deeply on them is where the real change happens. So a lot of problems can be solved. Kind of going off on a bit on a tangent here. I know that you just asked about motivation, but a lot of problems can be solved by just deeply thinking on the subject. And Dr. Alex Mayer as well, who is Ty's business partner, he said that one of the most effective productivity techniques for him is just to deeply think on the subject. So he said that, like, if he has a problem, he would think about like a chess master. He wouldn't just jump straight into it and action it straight away. He said he'd actually sit back and he'd think. Sometimes he'd go for like a drive in his car and he's like unhealthy, but he'd go and get like a burger or something like that. And on these long drives, he's just constantly playing the scenario out in his head. And he's playing the scenario out to find the answer. He's thinking deeply on it. And he was saying like the best productivity techniques comes from actually just thinking about your chess move until when you think about it enough, half the actions that you do on a day-to-day basis, you wouldn't actually do. He said, because once you've analyzed it enough, you'd already know it's a bad move or a pointless move. And I can relate this, to this as well. You go through times in life where you're busy or productive, and sometimes you think you're productive, but you're really being busy. Sometimes you're being busy, but you're actually being productive. I've went through a whole year in like my business where I was working 70 hours a week, 80 hours a week, just working. And then I've come out of it with zero gain at the end of the year. Like, in fact, I might have actually just be a bit more tired, right? I gained nothing and it hasn't added to anything. The experience, didn't learn much from the experience. I just got it wrong. And if I just thought about my actual steps or had a bit more knowledge on those steps before I actually took them, would have saved myself a whole year of zero gain. So that's actually the best productivity technique. Going back to that productivity question before, and in terms of motivation, you've got to move towards the reward, move away from the pain as well. Okay, so how do you balance work and personal life? Balancing work and personal life can be hard to balance. I'm curious to know how you maintain a healthy balance between the two. Said balance like 4 times in a sentence, so it's lost all meaning to me. Now, so how do you find balance in your life? Sometimes you're going to go through times in your life where you just don't have balance, right? It's just what it is. And sometimes you're going to have to work extremely hard for extended periods of time. It's just what it is. Now, what I would say is you always try and get balance. You should have an hour dedicated to something social every day, a few hours, preferably. You should set your life up so you've got hours for intense work. You should set your life up so you've got hours for health as well. So and only through that you'll become happy. There's lots of different books on this that it's kind of like the 4 quadrants of life, that you've got the health, the wealth, the love and the happiness. So you've got to try and integrate those in your day as best as you can. And time is the most scarce resource, so I completely get what you mean, because it's the only resource that you don't actually get back. And when you've got something as delicate as that, it's very, very hard. So what do you do about it? Well, first of all, you have to, how do you integrate health into your day? Well, you could eat healthier, right? It's an easy one. You've got to eat anyway. You might as well eat healthier, right? How can you exercise? Can you go to the gym? Because although you might find that you've not got enough time at the moment to do these things, you'll actually get more. Here's the paradox: you'll get more done because you're much more productive, because your brain chemicals are in a much happier place. So, can you check health off the list whilst you're trying to seek the wealth? Because I'm assuming you're working so much because you're going for the wealth, right? You're either working in a very demanding career, hopefully that's rewarding, or you're working in a business and you might be building that up, right? So then you've got the love factor. How do you integrate, which can be social, friends, family, romance. How do you integrate that in? Well, you've got a few different ways to do it. You're always going to have hours spare in the evening. If you don't have hours spare in the evening and it's consistent and it's not just like one of these periods that you're going through, you need to think a lot. You need to, as Robert Greene says, meditate on the problem. Figure out why. Is your career too much? Is it good money but you're working a lot of hours? Is it poor money and you're working a lot of hours? I've done one of those jobs. So you need to make a conscious decision to change that. Okay. Sometimes you're just going to have to work though. And if you can't really integrate, if you can't really, get a little section of your day where you can have social, have a chance to interact with your fans, family, friends, and build a relationship for yourself, then something's obviously got to change. And there's two real ways to change it. So you either change what's taking the majority of your time, you get rid of it, do something else, or you integrate in your social relationships. So when I go to the gym, if I've got a friend who I've not caught up on a while, I'll shoot them a text. Do you want to come to the gym with me? I'll go to, if I'm not seeing, my fiance for a while, I'll go to the gym with her. We went and worked out today. We try and work out every weekend together. Sometimes I, go to the gym with my friends as well. Is there a way that we can go on a walk together, right? Can you integrate the health side in with your working, right? Can you, get like one of those little walking treadmills? Can you do that? Help you with your fitness a little bit? Can you actually, I've done this before, I did this in the pandemic actually, it was a really, really good technique, was I'd open up a Zoom room with other entrepreneurs who are like myself, and we'd sit in a Zoom room quietly and do deep work with each other. And every little while we'd just say, hey, but we'd just comment to each other. And what we were trying to do is we were trying to replicate if you're in an office environment, you work in an office environment, you can put your head over the desk and you can say something to the person opposite you or to the person who's next to you who's also working, right? And we're trying to replicate that to get the social side out of that, because that was a tough time for everyone. It was certainly a tough time for me because I'm an extrovert, right? So are there ways to do things like this to integrate it in? And if you come up with a good balance of this and nail those areas, you'll certainly be happy, right? So it is a tough challenge, but I hope that was a full answer for you. I've got to start winding down. I'll answer a few more questions. I've got to start winding down for the night now, guys. I'm going to Amsterdam tomorrow. So going quite early. How do you set goals? I mean, I've probably answered this in bits over the whole session today. How do I set goals? So, I mean, I set goals, I have goals for different areas. So the health, the wealth, the love, the happiness, I have all the goals for those different quadrants. And I try and make sure that I am progressively overloading myself in each of those areas every day, right? So what does progressive overload mean? Well, if you go to the gym and one day you're lifting 20 kilograms, on your chest press, you progressive overload by going to the next day, you either do more reps at 20 kilograms or you do 22 kilograms, right? That's progressive overload. You're pushing yourself a little bit, and that's how muscle grows. But it's also how your mind grows as well. If you are if you can only work for an hour that day because you are either busy or that's all the energy you've got, can you work for 70 minutes? Or can you do more work than you intended in those 60 minutes? So when it comes to actually setting goals, I'm like, how I focus on what I want, and then I backwards engineer it, knowing the exact steps I've got to take. And then when I'm actually taking those exact steps, I think to myself, well, can I work more efficiently there? Can I do something more efficiently? Can I progressively overload in that area? So for instance, this is a long ass video now. And it's went on 55 minutes according to the little timer here. I only intended to come on for 15 minutes, right? But I've kind of got into the flow of things, and the questions are good. So And I've got a lot of different takes on some of the questions, so I've just carried on talking. So in a way, it's kind of progressively overloading it. And also it's helping me with my ability to public speak. So like I'm gaining the skills, the attributes. It's like a video game. Life is like a video game. Gaining the skills and attributes at all times. If I'm doing a task, I'm making sure that the task, I'm getting skill points for those tasks. Right? I'm getting skill points for the goals as well. So interesting stuff. Okay. What are you focusing on in your business at the moment? A few different focuses. I've drastically changed what I'm doing over the last year. I've tried to really focus on the levers which time is limited. So I try to really focus on the levers which are actually generating the result. And one of the things is YouTube as well. So just dedicating a lot of time to YouTube, more videos about what I'm currently doing at the moment. I'm working a lot with AI and automation at the moment. So you'll see more stuff coming from me out of that at the moment. And I am planning to offer, what am I trying to do? Trying to offer automation packages to companies and helping them with certain things as well. And then they pay me as a, it's saving them money on employees whilst they can pay me half of what they pay an employee, something like that. So that's like kind of the plan. It's a new business idea. I've had a load of different business ideas over the last year. And the important thing in business is that you try lots and lots of different things and you go hard trying something. So you try it for like 60 days, hard as you can. And then you step back, did that work? Sometimes it's no, right? And that's perfectly normal, by the way. If everything was a yes whenever you try it, then the whole world would be way more competitive than what it currently is. So that's something wise that, somebody told me one day is I was looking at like the easiest ideas to do to make money, right? And one of my friends was like, you don't want it to be easy because if it's easy, then it's a low barrier to entry. When it's a low barrier to entry, your competition is sky high. So you want it to be difficult. And that's kind of how it goes as well. So that's what I'm focusing on at the moment, automation and AI, just because we've got a big rise in the industry at the moment. It's starting to get a lot of attention and it gives me the opportunity to learn code as well. I've always wanted to learn code. I've just never really had the reason to do it. So I've been like, how do I learn code? And code is quite difficult to learn, honestly. It's like basically learning a language from scratch. You've got to recognize why these things happen, and then you've obviously got to learn the tools as well. So it requires quite a bit of effort. So learning code, focusing on automation, focusing on AI, also selling programs on the side. I'm actually thinking about selling just a cheap, I've got to charge something for it, a cheap like ebook or maybe like a video course of something to do with psychology or something like that. Something that people can take action and start improving themselves on it. Just keep it very, very cheap. And just kind of run a community like that. The thing is about like my personality type is that, sometimes I like to do a lot of different things. Because I like to do a lot of different things, sometimes I don't focus too much on like the winning ideas. So, it's kind of going back to that balance thing. Things in life, you want to try as many things as you do. You want to open as many doors as you can and do a load of different things. There's only so much time in the day. So what can you actually do with the amount of time? You've got to focus on the important things, the things that either make you money, the things that make you happy, right? So I struggle with the balance of that sometimes. And, occasionally I'll get a business idea out the door, it'll be really good. And then I'll be like, oh, damn, there's another business idea, So what we do with partnering with someone who's very, very focused in these ideas to keep things legs. I'm great at starting a bunch of things, but that's my weakness. Like finishing a bunch of things is a bit of a different story unless I'm incredibly passionate about it. Okay, I actually started to get a bit of a sore throat just because I talk so much. So you mentioned about, what does that say? You mentioned about fitness. What are some other things that guys can do to You mentioned about fitness. What are some other things that guys can do to help them date? So look, dude, yeah, so there's a variety of different factors. I highly recommend that you read, Dr. David Buss's Evolutionary Psychology book. There's a variety of different factors that make men attractive. So, for instance, their ability to gather resources, right? Because if you look at it from an evolutionary approach, women, they have kids, they have to put an awful lot of dedication, time, and effort into having a child, first of all, then to actually raising that child as well. So they want somebody who's ambitious, who knows what they're doing, has the ability to gather resources. You should be focusing on your career, and you should be focusing on, focusing on a business or whatever. How do you improve in these areas? You need to be moving up the ladder, trying to move up the ladder at all times. I'm glad that no one tries to move up the ladder, because I get a competitive advantage with these guys, but you should be trying to move as best as you can up the ladder. So that's the first thing. Intelligence is the second thing. How smart are you? How intelligence is also correlated with the ability to gather resources. This is why intelligence is important. I did an IQ test, and I Googled afterwards. I was like, I know it's saying this, I'm not going to tell you what the score was, but I know that it's saying this score is quite good. But like, what's the practical benefits of it? So I Googled the IQ and I looked into Reddit for like people with the similar IQ. And I was looking at people who've made topics saying, I've got blah, blah, blah IQ. What, is this good? And every comment was like, IQ means nothing. It doesn't mean anything at all. You're just showboating because you got an IQ. And I was like, friggin' hell, spot the low IQ people in the thread, not butthurt at all. It's just funny, honestly. But there's a reason people basically act like that, is because if you're not intelligent, you're more likely to get weeded out of the gene pool. And that sounds super, super harsh, but that's generally what it boils down to. So others try and derogate, is that the right word? Derogate the importance of IQ. Detract from. Derogate the importance of IQ. It's derogation of competitors, basically. It's not that important. You shouldn't think so much of yourself. It's why people actually get angry at rich people as well. Oh, this guy must have cheated. He must have had the money given to him. He must have got it through, criminal means, etc. It's just to detract from their status, because it makes them feel more secure about themselves. If you don't feel secure about yourself as a person, it's not good. So, resource gathering, intelligence, leadership as well. How often do you take the bait and say, you know what, I'm gonna host a party, I'm gonna host a gathering, I'm gonna be the one asking people to do something together, to get the groups together? How often do you do that? Also, how often, if you're in work or you're in a business, how often do you say, you know what, put your hand up, I'll do that, I'll handle that myself? And these are leadership qualities, and this is very much what also makes you attractive as well. And then there's things that you can't really change, like height. I'm 6'1", so height is important, because the taller and more physical, physically fit you are, the more likely that the evolutionary approach is like the more likely you can protect your partner and their young as well. It's very, very interesting. So in our conscious thoughts, when you see a good looking person, or this person's very, handsome, or they're very pretty faced, all that means from an evolutionary approach is that that's a signal of not that many genetic mutations down the line of genes. So that's why you see them as beautiful. So if having big boils and acne all over your face, I had really bad acne when I was young. You can see I still got some scars from it, where it's actually like physically scarred me. I had really bad acne. But if acne and boils and things was attractive to people, then was a cue to good health, then it would be very, very attractive to people. We would all be chasing the people with like the acne and the boils, and it's just, when you start looking at things on like that kind of level, it's very big. So One of the things which actually loses you points is narcissism. The narcissism is a big problem. Narcissism is self-love. Narcissism, narcissists, talk about themselves all the time. They showboat about what they've got. It's all about me, 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 me. It can go as far as where it's actually narcissistic personality disorder, but narcissism actually detracts away from attractiveness as well. So a lot of these manosphere people that you follow, or you might have seen as well, they might have the height, the money, blah, 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 blah. They're also insanely, from some of the clips I've seen, insanely narcissistic as well, which is terrible, terrible for long-term relationships, because like men and women can smell that a mile off. And when they smell that, they're like, this person's probably not a very good person. They're just going to, from an evolutionary approach, they're just going to care about themselves, in the relationship. They're not going to be that kind, generous person who is going to look after me in the relationship. They're actually just going to prioritize themselves above all else. It's just dangerous, 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 dangerous to date a narcissist. So make sure you humble yourself with, make sure that you're keeping yourself checked in line, keeping that ego checked as well, making sure you're not thinking you're much better than everyone else. Okay, so courage as well. How courageous are you? What big risks? Are you a successful risk taker? Do you take risks and when others don't? And courage can be things like saying a funny comment in front of a big group of people and everyone laughs. It's courage, right? Courage can also be doing fighting training, right? Boxing. Okay, lots of different things here. Social circle. One of the big ones is social circle. I'm actually looking down some of the notes I made in this book. Social circle as well. So how good is your alliances and coalitions? How good are your friends? Unfortunately, most people don't realize this until kind of later on in life. They're like, oh, you know what? I kind of picked the wrong friends and they didn't really have my best interest at heart. But do you have like a big group of people that you can get together on the weekend with and have a good time with? If not, if you can genuinely think, when you're counting your friends, like, oh, this is, a really good friend, this is a really good friend, this is a really good friend. If you think to yourself, if I was to throw an event, who are the people I could invite that I know for a fact would turn up? We've all got those friends who just flake at the last minute. But if you think from like that angle, who could I bet on to turn up? And if it's not many people, maybe it's like one or two, okay, you need to be dedicating some time to building up a social circle of men and women. I don't care what all these manosphere people say about men and women can't be friends. I've had plenty of good women friends. And, you should mix your group up. You get different perspectives from other people, different, just lots of different personalities in there as well. And that's what makes a group social circle so good. But if you're trying to go out there on the dating market, people like to see that you're actually well liked by others, right? Because from an evolutionary approach, you want a strong tribe around you. Your partner wants you to have a strong tribe around you, a strong tribe of people who will look after you, genuinely look after you, and therefore, as a byproduct, look after them as well. Be on the lookout for predators or any bad eggs that are coming through. Be the type of person who you can reach out to for a favor, things like this, right? So it's complicated. It is complicated, but there's lots of different. The good thing is, if you're a guy, there's lots and lots of. If you're the same for men and women, but like particularly if you're a guy, there's lots and lots of different factors that you can improve to make yourself more dateable. If in terms of like status as well, it's the same thing. So I hope that helps. That was probably a long-winded answer, but at least it's a full answer. Again, you're not going to get this type of advice from TikTok videos, okay? So stop watching them. Even though I am on TikTok, I don't post any of the videos myself. Somebody else does it for me. All right, so I've got to go now because I'm losing my voice. I also got a trip to Amsterdam that I need to pack for. But I hope you enjoyed this video. Take care. See you in the next one. Let me know if you want to see more sort of psychology stuff like this in the future when this channel gets bigger. when we get actual revenue from the channel, I want to be inviting some of these people who can think very clearly, who are great thinkers, onto this here. Maybe like Jordan Peterson, maybe like Dr. David Buss. Get them on here. I'll pay for them. Have a seriously deep conversation with them about how you guys can improve yourselves, how you guys can, maybe you're trying to start a business, maybe you're trying to, grow as an individual. But I want to do that because I'll benefit out of it, but I also know you guys will benefit out of it. I can only do it when this channel starts actually monetizing, so I can just roll the profits straight back into it. So subscribe, and hope you enjoyed this video. See you soon. Take care.